Spider-Man has appeared in animated movies, blockbuster films, video games, and countless comic books. But now, we've finally gotten something completely different: Spider-Noir. A dark detective story set in the 1930s, starring Nicolas Cage blending classic film noir with superhero storytelling. The big question is, does it actually work? Hi guys, I am Prime Spider-Man 76, and today I'm reviewing the entire first season of Spider-Noir with zero major spoilers. I'll be talking about the story setup, performances, visual action, atmosphere, pacing, and whether it's worth your time. So, if you're wondering whether you should watch the series, you've come to the right place. Let's swing in. At its core, Spider-Noir is unlike any Spider-Man adaptation we've seen before. Instead of focusing on a young hero balancing school, friendships, and superhero responsibilities, this series follows an older, worn-down protagonist living in a gritty version of the 1930s New York. This show leans heavily into detective stories. Think smoky offices, dark alleyways, corruption, criminal conspiracies, moral ambiguity, and a city that feels alive but constantly on the verge of collapse. This series isn't trying to be another Marvel-style action spectacle. Instead, it asks, what happens when a superhero story is filtered through the lens of an old-school noir cinema? The result feels refreshingly unique. Even though the character is connected to the Spider-Man mythos, the show stands remarkably well on its own. You don't need to be a comic book expert. You don't need to have watched every Spider-Man movie. And you definitely don't need to memorize multiverse lore to understand what's happening. The series establishes its own identity almost instantly. If there's one thing Spider-Noir absolutely nails, it's atmosphere. This might be one of the most visually distinctive superhero shows ever produced. Every frame feels carefully crafted. Lighting creates deep shadows. The streets look dangerous. The buildings tower over characters like giant monuments. Even simple conversations feel cinematic because of the way scenes are framed. What's particularly impressive is how committed the show is to noir aesthetic. It doesn't feel like the modern superhero series wearing a noir costume. It feels like a genuine noir story that happens to feature a superhero. The production design deserves a huge amount of praise. Cars, costumes, architecture, street signs, everything helps create the illusion that you stepped into another era. And whether you watch the black and white presentation or the colour version, the visual identity remains incredibly strong. The show understands that atmosphere isn't just about what you see, it's about how a world makes you feel. And Spider-Noir consistently feels lonely, mysterious, and dangerous. Let's talk about Nicolas Cage, because honestly, this series lives or dies based on whether his performance works. Fortunately, he absolutely delivers. Cage has always been an unpredictable actor. Sometimes he's subtle, sometimes he's completely over the top. Sometimes he's somehow both at the same time. Here, he finds a really interesting balance. His character feels tired, haunted, experienced, and deeply human. You can feel years of history behind every conversation, even when the show isn't explicitly explaining things. What surprised me most was how restrained his performance often is. There are certainly moments where Cage gets to be Cage, but for much of the series, he's operating in a low register. That approach fits the tone perfectly. He feels believable as a detective, believable as a former hero, and believable as someone carrying a tremendous amount of emotional baggage. This isn't just stunt casting, it genuinely feels like a role he was meant to play. By the end of the season, it's difficult to imagine someone else in the part. A great noir story can't survive on one performance alone. Fortunately, the supporting cast is excellent. Without revealing specific story details, the series introduces a wide range of characters who all feel like they belong in this world. Journalists, criminals, politicians, police officers, powerful figures operating behind the scenes. Everyone adds another layer of the city's ecosystem. One of the strongest aspects of the writing is that characters generally have clear motives. Even when people disagree, you understand where they're coming from. That makes conflicts feel more engaging. The villains are particularly effective because they're not simply obstacles. They're woven into larger themes of corruption, power, and survival. Some supporting characters receive more development than others, but overall, the Assemble does a great job helping the world feel believable. Now, let's discuss the story itself. Again, no spoilers. The narrative unfolds more like a detective mystery than a traditional superhero adventure. Questions are introduced gradually, clues emerge piece by piece, characters with hidden agendas reveal themselves over time, and the audience is encouraged to pay attention. This isn't a show that constantly stops to explain everything. In many ways, it respects viewers enough to let them connect the dots themselves. That's something I really appreciated. The dialogue is another strength. There are moments that feel pulled straight from classic noir films, sharp exchanges, dry humour, philosophical observations, and plenty of memorable one-liners. The writing also avoids one of the biggest problems facing many modern superhero projects. It doesn't seem embarrassed by its premise. The series takes itself seriously without becoming self-important. It understands that noir can be dramatic, stylish, and occasionally strange. As a result, the tone remains remarkably consistent throughout the season. The mystery elements are strong enough to keep you engaged from episode to episode. Even when action isn't happening, you're invested because you want answers. One concern many viewers might have is whether the show actually feels like a Spider-Man story. The answer is yes, but perhaps not in the way you expect. The series prioritizes suspense, investigation, and character drama over non-stop action. That doesn't mean that the action is absent, far from it. When action scenes happen, they matter. They are usually well choreographed, they're visually creative, and most importantly, they feel connected to the story. The show understands that action becomes more exciting when you care about the people involved. Rather than overwhelming viewers with constant spectacle, it carefully chooses when to raise the intensity. That approach makes major moments feel more impactful. If you're expecting wall-to-wall superhero battles, this may not be exactly what you're looking for. But if you enjoy character-driven storytelling with bursts of action, you'll probably appreciate the balance. No series is perfect, and Spider-Noir does have a few weaknesses. The biggest criticism some viewers may have involves pacing. This show moves deliberately, very deliberately. For fans of noir storytelling, that's likely going to be a positive. The slower pace allows the atmosphere to breathe, characters get room to develop, the world feels richer. However, viewers expecting constant momentum may occasionally find certain episodes a bit slow. There are stretches where the focus remains firmly on conversations, investigations, and world building. Personally, I think the slower pacing serves the story. But it's worth mentioning because not everyone will feel the same way. Beyond that, there are a handful of story threads that could have benefited from a little more screen time. Nothing major, just a few areas where I found myself wanting some additional exploration. What impressed me most about Spider-Noir is that it feels confident. In an entertainment landscape where many superhero projects chase the same trends, this series takes a different path. It knows exactly where it wants to be. It isn't trying to imitate other Marvel stories. It isn't trying to set up 20 future projects. It isn't constantly teasing something bigger. Instead, it focuses on telling its own story. That creative confidence shines through in almost every episode. So, is Spider-Noir worth watching? Absolutely! It's stylish, atmospheric, beautifully acted, visually distinctive, and refreshing because it is different from most superhero television. Nicolas Cage delivers one of the strongest performances we've seen in a comic book adaptation in quite some time. The noir setting feels authentic, the mystery keeps you engaged, and the series proves that superhero stories can still find new directions after decades of adaptations. It's not perfect, The pacing won't work for everyone, and viewers expecting non-stop action may need to adjust their expectations. But if you're willing to embrace the detective story approach, there's a lot to love here. My spoiler-free score for Spider-Noir is 9 out of 10, a bold and stylish reinvention that stands confidently on its own. If you've already watched the series, let me know your thoughts in the comments below, without spoilers of course. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more reviews, rankings and deep dives. Thank you for watching, and remember, anyone can wear the mask.